Welcome to Business Blurb, you and the Dropouts podcast. My name is Brendan Cox, and I'm here with my co-host, Devin Caherly. What's up, Devin?
What's going on, everybody? Today we have a very special guest. His name is Blake Wynn. He's a sneaker collector and entrepreneur behind multiple businesses.
What's up, Blake?
How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
Sure. It's actually funny that you're here because, you used to always pop up on my YouTube, what do you call it? For you. What's the front page of YouTube called anyway?
Trending?
Suggested or trending.
So it used to always be on my suggested when I was watching, I guess John Carlo, but I never watched them like crazy. Just you know how YouTube works. You click on one video and they know that for the rest of your life. So, what made you get started with YouTube and, I guess, the sneaker world in general?
To be honest, I've been reselling shoes since I was 11 years old. My parents got divorced when I was pretty young. And so when my parents got divorced, I ended up being pretty much raised solely by my single mom. And so we kind of had to just figure things out. And so, started reselling shoes when I was 11, and it was actually doing pretty well. I ended up, being a top rated seller on eBay by the time I was 13. Everything was going well. And by 15, 16, I felt like it was kind of plateauing. And so when I was 16, I decided, well, I want to market this. And so I reached out to guys like Kais and a channel called Nice Kicks back then that was really popping. Basically anyone that had a following in the sneaker space to offer to pay them to market my business. And the prices they wanted were just astronomical. And some of them didn't even respond. And so I was like, I'm just going to do this myself. So in my early videos, I literally am showing my inventory and I'm like, this is a Dornbecker 3, size 12, 750. Here's my PayPal info. And it was literally my mom's PayPal because I wasn't 18. Just literally trying to sell shoes. And then I made a collection video shortly after that, around day 30 of my channel. And that kind of blew up, got 1 million views. And then it was kind of off to being an influencer in that space. That's
awesome. For the people that don't know, how'd you get all these shoes? Did you just go to the store and get them, or did you get them online? How did that process work?
A bit of everything. I from the time I was 13 to 16, I would travel the country going to these little events called Dunk Exchanges, Heated Soul Summits. SneakerCon was a thing back then, but it wasn't that big. SneakerCon's obviously super popular now, but back then, I think the first SneakerCon I ever went to, I don't even think there was 1,000 people. It was just it was a way different space. There was no YouTubers in the space. There was nothing like that. And so buying at events like that, I had different guys I'd bulk buy off of. I would go to outlets 5 times a week and buy pairs there. Just really however I could get my hands on pairs, and they'd go straight on the eBay store and I'd flip them. And so when I first started, people thought I had this wild collection, and I guess in a sense it was a collection, but really it was just my inventory. And my inventory when I first started YouTube happened to be worth about 100,000 at the time. And I had some, rare samples and different things like that. So Kais actually came to the house and he did a little story on me when he had a channel back then called Crew Kicks. A guy named Kais Omar, for those who are not familiar, he's one of the bigger OGs in the sneaker YouTube space. And he called the video 16-year-old with $100,000 sneaker collection. And when he posted that, I think I gained 5,000 subscribers overnight, got to 10,000 45 days after posting my first video. And then 6 months later hit 100,000, and it was just pretty quick, the growth on there. And it was so much fun too, because I grew up I only had 50 kids in my high school. Wow. So it was very interesting to get exposed to so many people so quickly.
Yeah, Kais had I don't know if he still is the top. He's obviously one of the top, but back then I feel he was the top of the top. Nobody was bigger than him, and that was probably a big deal to get it wasn't a shout out, but do a collaboration with him.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of funny how it came to be. I'd been emailing him back and forth, because he had this segment where once a week he would post someone's collection video, and all these collection videos, no hate to any of the other kids, they had awesome collections, but I was damn, I have honestly, I have a more robust inventory than any of these collections are showing. Also, I have stuff that you don't see every day. I had samples that were 1 of 24 and 1 of 50, and just stuff that you didn't even see either, as opposed to just really expensive Yeezys or things like that, which I felt was what was more commonly being shown. And so I went back and forth with him a lot, and he was yeah, next time in Vegas, I got you. And so finally I went to SneakerCon Bay Area 2 weeks before I made my first upload, literally to film my first video. And I had a LeBron 10 championship pack. It was from when they first won the championship when he was on the Miami Heat. It was a $3,000 box. It's this big gold box, 2 pairs come in it. It was this crazy pair of shoes. and Kais's like best friend is a huge LeBron fan and really wanted him, but he literally only had $800 on him. And I was like, yeah, like, you know, whatever. Obviously, I can't like sell you this. And ultimately, I was like, you know what? If I'm really gonna do this YouTube thing, I may as well just like try to get in with who's at the top. Like I always looked at everything as a longer term decision, I suppose. And so I ended up giving him this pair for $800, and I went up to Kais, kind of told him what had happened, and he was like, I got you. 2 weeks later, he came to Vegas, did the collection video, and like the rest was history. So definitely it was a good long-term play to get rid of those shoes. Back then, man, I could really not afford that $2,000 loss, but obviously glad it worked out
Yeah, are
that
you
way.
still tight with Kais? Like, do you still talk to him?
Yeah, like I still talk to everyone. Like there's no one in the sneaker space that I don't get along with. Like I get along with all of them. For me, the biggest reason why I left, which I feel like everyone wants to know, and I've kind of been quiet about it on my own socials, just because I don't think that like I think that all the other sneaker YouTubers would understand where I'm coming from, but I feel like a lot of people that supported me would kind of feel bad about me saying it. But I'm happy to share, and it's really just that like I felt like the sneaker YouTube space was getting really dry, honestly, and I feel like it now is exceptionally dry. Like I feel like everyone kind of blew up in 2017 because they kind of meshed vlogging with sneakers, and it was super interesting. But basically since then there's been absolutely no adjustment or reinvention of the wheel, and I think it's absolutely needed. And so by 2018 I was just like, I either got to think of what's next and how I'm going to not reinvent myself, but you know, create a new style of sneaker content. Otherwise I think I'm going to plateau coming up here shortly, and then I'm going to fall off, and then what, right? Then how do you transition that? Versus I felt like when I left, it was honestly because I couldn't think of what the space needed. I tried, you know, and there's different things I tried that I liked, but ultimately I was like, you know what? I think there's a better opportunity in a different space. And so I felt like it was just better to leave while I was still had something to leave with, you know?
Back then, the only person that I knew in the sneaker space before I got more into it was that Benjamin Kicks guy. I don't know if he's still doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Ben's a friend of mine. I mean, I haven't talked to him in some years, and obviously he's going through some different things now. I hope at the very least, like the things that are being said about him are true, because like the world's in a tough spot, man. Like everyone, as soon as you lose in the court of public opinion, like you're just screwed. So I hope that, you know, he's going through some different legal issues and things like that. Like I hope, like, I mean, obviously I don't hope it's true, but if it is not true, like he's in a tough spot as a young kid who's getting all this bad press on him.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. Like, I mean, regardless of like what space you're in, it's like one article that could like be completely false, could like ruin your whole freaking. Like, I know somebody personally that like had an article published about them that was like some things were true, but a majority of it was false, and like so many jobs and partnerships have been lost. And like even like I work in the TikTok space, like behind Devin and some other influencers too, and like somebody could just tell a lie about you on a TikTok and there's not really any repercussions, but like for the person you lied about, like they'll lose a $15,000 brand deal like with like in like 30 seconds of them saying it. So it's pretty crazy.
Man, that's the least of it is like a brand deal. Like think about like look at a guy like Deshaun Watson right now. I don't know if you guys are football fans, but like,
I'm not, but I know
like,
exactly what's going on. Yeah.
You know, I don't. Deshaun's one of the guys like I have no affiliation with. Like I have no idea if these things are true or not. But it's like even if they're not true, he already lost. Like look at Ray Lewis when he was accused of murder. You know, back in the day, like it's just like those things never go away. I mean, I remember as sick as this is, and obviously I hate to bring this up, nor am I saying that I believe this in any way, shape, or form. But even like when Kobe died, and people are like, "Yeah, well, he's a rapist." I'm like, "What the? How? Why? Because one reporter said it one time." You know what I mean? Like, it's like, man, like it's tough. Like that's what we have courts for. So you can figure out if you're actually guilty or not. Whereas now, like the court is social media, and it's putting a country in a really tough spot.
I agree. Yeah, it's rough. But yeah, so off that topic, I guess. I mean, that's a touchy subject, but yeah, I'm with you on that. It's definitely in a tough space. But so you kind of like transitioned out of the sneaker world a little bit, and then you started FSL, which is it's like a fantasy sneaker league app, if I'm correct, right?
So I didn't start it. So I kind of was brought onto the project. It was an app started by a father and son out of Denver, Colorado. The son was like a fan of mine. And it was so funny. It was like my second week in college. I'd actually just started like the sports agency, which is more or less what I run now. It's just that it's kind of morphed a couple times over the course of the last 3 years. But I basically was like going through my spam folder, bored to death. in like a pre-calc class that I had my freshman year. And I saw this, it was really an email that was like, hey, I will pay you to come out to Denver this weekend. I have an idea I want to talk to you about that I run with my son. And I was just like, okay. And I was like, well, and I literally was like, if you want to do it, I'll take 10 grand and I'll be on a plane this Friday. Literally, like, no profile picture, no phone call, no nothing. I instantly got wired the 10K. I was like, all right, I guess I'm going on a flight to Denver. I get there. They explain what they're doing with FSL. Super great people. I came onto that project for about 6-7 months. But that was kind of like my first exposure to running the marketing for something beyond like myself or one of the like, you know, like my merch business or my resale business while I was on YouTube. Like something outside of my own business was my first exposure to it. And it was incredibly successful. We didn't spend that much on marketing. We got into the top 50 on the App Store for a point in time. You know, got a bunch of users. It was basically just like an app where you could, it was like a video game where you spent 15 minutes trying to resell shoes virtually, and whoever essentially had made the most profit in those 15 minutes based on like StockX and GOAT's like real-time data was able to win like a free pair of shoes. And it was pretty cool. I haven't been involved in that project now in probably 2.5 years. I mean, it was a very successful project, don't get me wrong, but that was kind of right as I was starting my own business. And so I kind of took a step back from that, then focused really hard on essentially what we did is we just acquired brand deals for athletes, like on their socials. But because I always looked at it like guys like Tom Brady, guys like Saquon Barkley, like those guys can get brand deals left and right all day long for millions of dollars. But a lot of people who I had become very good friends with that were like defensive ends and linebackers and offensive linemen and tight ends, like they didn't really have any opportunities to make any money off the field. And 86% of all NFL players are broke within 36 months of retiring. And I just felt like that was a legitimate problem that needed to be solved. So that was how we started it. And then about 1.5 years later, we pivoted to being a marketing agency that just kind of has all the components in-house. Like instead of having to go to management to say, hey, I got a client that wants an athlete, we have like 200 of them signed to us. That way we can just kind of do everything in-house. And that's where we're at now.
Just out of curiosity, so you sign athlete. Well, at first it was B1 Sports, and then you pivoted, and now it's Enclave and Key, right? And so you sign athletes. Are these like mostly exclusive deals, or is it like we'll sign you if we can bring you something, like we're going to take a percentage, or are these people like locked in with you?
So that was actually why we pivoted from B1 Sports to Enclave and Key. It's interesting. We used to take a percentage, but to be honest, taking a percentage is really no more than being a sales company, because you basically just have to get these guys sponsorships. You don't make anything until you get them a sponsorship. You get a small cut. Also, like we were taking 20%, which in my opinion was way too high, even though it might be fair because we were only taking 20% of what we brought them, obviously not like their contracts and things like that. But at the same time, I was just like, there's a better way to do this. Plus we have so much more to work with. We work with now about 2,000 influencers. Like we have TikTokers, YouTubers, actors, musicians, professional athletes, and a lot more than just NFL now. And so that's why we pivoted to Enclave and Key. Is what we did is we decided, okay, the companies are going to be the clients. They'll, essentially, to break it down to bare bones, they pay us a retainer. And then on top of that, they give us the marketing budget they want to allocate that month. And if they want influencers, we have them all in-house. If they want, press, we can do that. If they want, an ad spend, we have the experts in-house. So like now it's like, I would say it's a traditional marketing agency with quite a bit of additional capabilities that a lot of our competitors don't have. But no, so it's non-exclusive. We now don't take a single dollar from the talent. Like if a guy comes in and says, hey, I want $5,000 to do an Instagram story or like something that basic, I'd be like, okay. So if we have a client who has $100,000 monthly spend and that's an influencer who they want, and obviously their story's worth $5,000. There's not a lot of people whose stories are worth $5,000, but just hypothetically, like saying that was the case, like boom, we give them the story, they get 100% of it, they can do whatever they want with that money, and the client is our company is the company essentially.
Gotcha. I was looking at your Instagram account, and you're working with the Chargers. Did you make that connection because of the agency, I'm guessing?
No, so I've actually been a global brand ambassador for them since 2017. I've just been a diehard Chargers fan my whole life. Like since I was 6 years old, super into football. That's honestly why I started this thing in the first place. Is I just honestly wanted to be friends with athletes. Like as stupid as that sounds, when I'm like a 17-year-old kid, I just thought that was really cool. Like people like Giancarlo, they became friends with guys like Lil Yachty and Ugly God and Lil Xan. Like he was into rappers. Like Blake Linder was also into rappers. So he's got like a lot of like guys like Famous Dex, and I think he's friends with Migos. Like he's friends with a lot of those kind of guys. For me, it was athletes. And so I made a huge effort to kind of be the sneaker plug for athletes. So that was kind of like more or less, my positioning, but it's like essentially everything kind of just fell into place. Like it wasn't ever like I was like, I'm going to start this agency. I'm going to start the YouTube and I'm going to try to be an influencer. Like everything was always very natural. It was like I wanted to market sneakers, and then it took off into being an influencer. And I was like, okay. And so kind of ran that for 2 years. And then it was like, I had so many athletes hitting me up for sneaker deals. And then when they'd come to Vegas, they wanted to stay at like the Wynn. And then when they'd go to New York, they like wanted to go like out, because I was at Fordham and I was in with like all the clubs out there at 18. And so they were like, we want to go get tables at Playboy Club and all these different spots. And so like, long story short, it all just like kind of flowed into, next thing flowed into the next thing. And so it's just like, I think that's when the best business happens, is when it's just natural like that.
That makes sense too. Like with the whole plugging the athletes, and then you kind of got like in with the athletes, made those connections, and now you're probably working with a lot of those same people.
Are you?
Yeah. We've never lost an athlete, so it's been awesome. I mean, that's largely what allows the business to grow, is just the fact that when you bring someone on, it's not burn and turn. You establish that relationship, you continue to, and like, so we've had guys now that have been signed to us for 3 years, and then we have guys that have been signed to us for 2 days.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you still plugging these athletes with sneakers, or no?
No, well, some of them have like different deals with different, sneaker-based companies, of course, if that's something they're interested in. Also, like if an athlete all the time I'll have athletes hit me up like, hey, this shoe's coming out this week, like any connections to it. Like one guy, like Walker Buehler, if you guys are baseball fans, like he's a pitcher for the Dodgers, like he hits me up all the time, like, yo, can you get me this SB? Can you get me this? Can you get me this? And usually what I do is I just connect him to like one of my buddies in the sneaker space that I know could really benefit from hooking up an athlete, where it's like, it's not a paid deal. They don't even have to post on their social. And it's just like, yeah, here's this pair at retail or free or something like that. So that's typically how I do the sneaker thing now. But it was more so just like a way to get in with athletes, where it didn't really seem like I was asking for anything. Also, like I wasn't, but it's just like everyone's into sneakers. It's such an easy, relatable topic, right? Like you got to think, like I'm from, suburban Las Vegas, like went to a small private school. Like I don't really have much in common with, a guy who played for University of Alabama and has been a superstar since he was 15 years old. And now he makes $40 million, every 2 years in the NFL, right? Like there's not a lot of commonality there, but sneakers is like a really good starting point.
Yeah,
for
it
that.
Totally makes good connections. And you said you went to Fordham. Are you still in college?
No. So about 8 months in, when the business started doing a lot better, was like the end of my freshman year. I was like, I'm going to give this a go to really try to scale it. And so myself, along with one of my buddies who I've gone to school since I was 3 years old, that was kind of who started it with me. He also left school. He was at University of Nevada, Reno at the time. We both left, and now the rest is history. I mean, at first it was obviously a little bit scary, not being in college. I was just raised like, you go to college, like that's the end of the conversation. But yeah, it's worked out. It's worked out since. So I've been out of school now for a little more than 2 years.
Welcome to the Dropouts podcast. It's actually funny. Like, we didn't expect to have that many like college dropouts on here, but we've actually had like a decent amount, just like coincidentally.
I just think, look, man, like, well, first of all, I was majoring in entrepreneurship. So like, you're not really going to get a lot of jobs with a degree that basically says like you wanted to work for yourself the whole time, like more or less. I think that's what that says. Also, like, I'm not a big believer in like the college way that it's set up now. It's like, it's a business. Like I was a client of Fordham's is how I felt when I was there. And like, I'm not saying Fordham's a bad school or it's worse than any other school in the country or better or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, in general, like all these private universities that are charging you $70,000 a year for 4 years to basically get a piece of paper from them. Like, what a fantastic business model that is. But like the value isn't there. Like, so if I spend $280,000, assuming I had to get student loans in 4 years, how am I ever going to get that back? Like if I'm looking at college as an investment and I'm getting a degree in entrepreneurship, that may be partly my bad for not getting a more, easy to hire major, but I just in general,
I always wonder, like, I was an entrepreneurship major as well, but like you can't really teach entrepreneurship in like school. I feel like it's just about doing it,
Man, I preach to the choir. It drove me. I'll tell you the funniest story. This is ultimately so. I actually dropped out about 3 weeks before the end of my second semester of freshman year. But one of the last things I ever attended, and I called. So my mom and I are like, that's like my best friend, and I called her up. I talked to her, 45 minutes a day, like every day, and I called her up, and I was as hot as I've ever been in my whole life. They had this personal branding expert come to Fordham to talk to the entire freshman class. It was like 2,000-ish kids, right? Like we did it in like the basketball, like not even stadium, like little like court or whatever area you want to call it. And this girl's a personal branding expert. She had about 10% of the followers that I had, and I disagreed with basically everything she said, which don't get me wrong, like I'm happy to disagree with anyone and have healthy conversation, but it was like this personal branding expert who I'm basically paying this crazy amount of money to hear from. Like, this is like a unique opportunity my school's providing me with. Like, this girl she had like 440 LinkedIn connections, like 11,000 followers on Instagram. And it looked like, I feel like you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I don't even remember her name. And if I did, I wouldn't say it because like, I obviously don't have anything wrong with her personally, but like, it was just like, those Instagram pages that are set up by those like people that are like, they just care so much about looking like an entrepreneur, but like you can tell they're really not doing shit with themselves. You know what I'm talking about?
Kind of.
Like, it was a total situation like that. I like looked at her Instagram, like she didn't have, well, I don't want to like speak out of line because obviously I didn't look through 11,000 people, but like nothing, like in looking through her posts, looking through like any mutuals, like looking through like her top followers, like there was no one of really any legitimate value that I at least noticed that was even following her. I'm like, personal branding expert in what? Like, you have no personal brand. Like 11,000 followers is equivalent to being a really attractive girl in high school.
No, that makes, dude, the funniest thing is we literally, the first person we had on this podcast had the same thing. Devin with Jack, he said literally the same thing. He's like, there was some girl I talked to and she had like 400 followers and he has like 100,000 on TikTok, and she's like trying to like talk to him and like tell him how to market through her like textbook that's from like the 1990s. So it's funny that you even bring that up. But yeah, it's literally, it's like, I don't know what it is. Like it's just like college is, I don't know. I feel like college is slowly becoming like less and less of a requirement. And like even my dad works at like a big book publishing company, and he says the same thing. He's like, yeah, we really don't care. Like, I mean, he has people that interview from Harvard, and he has people that interview from like small schools, and then he has people that interview without a school. And it's like, I mean, it's just like it doesn't really matter that much these days, especially like I don't know.
Technology's changing.
I don't. Well, that and I don't think it matters that much because if the goal is simply learning, you can learn online for free. There's like that great Elon Musk bit I'm sure you guys have seen where it's just like college isn't for learning. College is for proving that you can do your chores for 4 years in a row. I think that's a fantastic quote because that is really like exactly, at least to me, what it is, right? Also, like if I was trying to be a lawyer or a doctor, obviously I would probably have a different opinion on this, but like from a business perspective, I don't get it. Also, like now as an employer, when I have people come in that haven't gone to college versus people that come in that have gone to college, honestly, one of the biggest differences that I notice is like their sense of entitlement. Like people are really hungry when they haven't gone to college. Now, obviously there's some that haven't gone to college and also aren't hungry. And, I wish those people the best, but like that obviously puts you in a tough spot. But there's so many people who are like, they think that because they went to college, they're entitled to these wildly high salaries, like beyond starting salaries and like, just all these different things. And I'm just like, why? Because you paid 280 grand to get that piece of paper, or your parents did. Like, I can appreciate it. And like, obviously, like, don't get me wrong. Like if you graduated from a good school, like I don't for a second think that you're not smart, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, how often is it that schools flunk kids? Basically never, because that just costs them a client, right? Like what interest does a college have in straight up flunking you? Like they'll give you low C so you can graduate and keep paying. The only times I've really even heard of kids getting flunked out are the kids that are there on scholarship because they didn't do as well and they're not paying. So the college is a lot less likely to give them a little bit of a break on something. It just like the whole thing is very, very odd. Also, like even going back to the personal branding thing, like my viewpoint, like I love learning. Like to me, I do truly consider myself one of the dumbest people in my company. I really do, as weird as that sounds, because it's like I don't want to hire people that are a fraction of my knowledge. I want to hire people that are smarter than me and understand the vision that we're all going for and can all get excited about it and can all help contribute to growing it beyond just like a fraction of my own knowledge, right? Like that wouldn't really be worth anything.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And so like for me, I was like, I went to Fordham because I was like, I'm going to be in New York. Like, if they're going to bring a personal branding expert in, they're going to bring in Gary Vaynerchuk. They're not going to bring in like this random girl with 11K. And that wasn't the case. And I'm like, well, if you're going to bring her in, you may as well have had me go up there and give a spiel. Like I clearly understand it beyond this person at least. Right. So it's like, I don't know. It just, the whole thing, it just didn't leave a great taste in my mouth and just felt like a huge waste of money for a year.
I feel you. Like, going back to your team, how many people do you have working for you like currently?
So we have 24 right now.
Full-time or part-time or like
of the 24, 19 are full-time.
Sick. And is everybody remote, or is it like a office space in Vegas or something?
So a little bit of both. So the office space in Vegas, we have, let's see, 4, 6, we have 15, counting myself here in the office in Vegas. And then I got 4 remote, although 3 of the 4 that are remote also live in Vegas. Like, because I give everyone the option, like, if you want to be remote right now with COVID, like, you have every right to want that. And I'm totally fine with that. Otherwise, like, we have a fun office space. And like, you know, like my big thing, like, is culture. Like, we built like an incredible culture here where like everyone loves coming to work. Like, we have an unlimited days off policy. Like, we're pretty unorthodox how we run internally, but, you know, because of, you know, I guess whatever it is, you know, the thing is, people tick for different reasons, right? Like, some people love what they do here because athletes are walking in and out of the office all the time. Some people love what they do here because they got a marketing degree in college, and like, this is a way where they can apply it in a company that very much so is like on the 2021 to 2025 curve, as opposed to like selling billboards and radio ads and shit like that. You know, like, everyone has a different reason for liking it here. Some people love it here just because they've become best friends with their coworkers, and like, whatever it is awesome. But, you know, it's a lot more fun trying to problem solve in business than on a word problem in a pre-calc class.
Oh, totally. Well, before we wrap it up, what's one piece of advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs? Maybe like some people that are listening to this and be like, I want to be like Blake Wynn. Like, what's one advice you would give to them that inspire them?
That's tricky. I would say one thing that we always say here, like, it's like our little company motto or whatever you want to call it, if you will, I suppose, is like, you don't have to do things the normal way to do things the right way. I think that's incredibly true for young people. Like, I feel like when you're in school, you're taught the difference between the right way to do things and, oh, this won't work. But the things that won't work, it's based on whether it's an outdated textbook, a professor who more or less assumes that on a theoretical level, like, right? Like, if you haven't done it, right? Like, all these professors, like, have they started successful businesses? Have they worked on Wall Street for 30 years? I mean, if the answer is yes, okay, that probably bears a little more weight then. But like, largely, I feel like a lot of people are talked out of their own ideas because of, I mean, obviously there's like the cliche, like, oh, you're like afraid of failing, like shit like that. Like, I don't really believe that a real entrepreneur like thinks like that. Like, I think being an entrepreneur is something that people are largely born with to an extent, because you have to be comfortable living a relatively uncomfortable lifestyle on paper, right? Like, especially for the first probably 3 to 5 years. And so I don't think, like, the idea of failure, I don't think really scares true entrepreneurs. I feel like it's like, yeah, duh, that's obviously a possibility, but that's not going to prevent me from doing this, you know? So I would say in general, like, take something you're really passionate about, build a business around it. And if it doesn't work for a while, keep adjusting until it ultimately works. And if it doesn't end up working at some point, then get other people involved. Like, I think that people are wildly underestimated. Like, I feel like some of the biggest challenges that I've had just in my own business, I've literally been able to fix by connecting with a different person or bringing a new person on who knows so-and-so, who, you know, like, you know, for example, like, I was like, man, I don't know how to get the right lawyer. And then when we brought Easy Busta on, who's another sneaker YouTuber, just as like an influencer, he was like, dude, I got like the best lawyer. In fact, before he did like influencer law, he used to be one of the main attorneys for the NFLPA. And I was like, bro, please connect me to him. Connected me to him. And he's been our in-house counsel now for the last 2 years. And it's like stuff like that. That's like, it can be incredibly challenging. You don't know where to go. People can literally solve that problem. So network a lot, you know, and just don't stop. Like, I feel like most people stop, and that's where you have really, really
that's
no
definitely
chance.
Like super. I feel like that's a super valuable piece of advice. Like, especially with the networking. Like, there's so many different scenarios that like you just have a guy for now that you like met, like the Yeezy Buster situation. Like that's such a great point. But like I don't know, even me, like I've met somebody at like a Starbucks who's ended up like helping me like immensely with different things, or like I've literally somebody's DM'd me for something that I'm like really close friends with now, and like we help each other out all the time. So definitely a super good piece of advice.
How
We're
old are you
both
guys, if
20.
you don't mind me asking?
Yeah.
So like, okay, like I don't know if you're willing to even say it on this, but have you ever like more or less gone out, like even if it's not to a club, like just like a party, like outside of COVID, whatever, like I know but like you see what I'm saying, like have you ever gone to an event like that, like where people are drinking, whether it's you guys or not, right, like the whole thing, have you been
Of
in
course.
situations like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, okay, so like those situations, I cannot tell you how many people you can meet, especially when they're drunk, because then they're really talking about themselves. You get a good feel for where they're at if they're that kind of personality type. Also, if they're not that way, they're asking you 1.5 million questions. Either way, it's a huge win because you end up with this guy's or girl's contact from this, random party in Hollywood. And, a year later, they turn out to be something, or currently they're doing something, or even if they're not something, maybe there's just someone who seems hungry who you can bring on to your project. Like I honestly think from 18 to now, if you're under 21, don't drink. Obviously I gotta say that, but if you're 18 to 26, I think partying, like for the purpose of networking, is probably the most underrated thing in the world right
No,
now in terms of
yeah,
building
I
a business.
realized that when I got out to LA. Like before, like I would go out and it just like wouldn't benefit me. But like when I go out in LA, I'm like, holy crap, you can meet so many cool people. And like personally, I don't care. I just go up to people. I'm like, yo, like tell me about yourself. Like who are you? And like they love it too. And you can just meet that and get there, connect, like you
There's
said.
there's definitely a big difference between college partying where people are just like trying to black out to forget that they failed on a test, and like
Yeah,
and
no,
like
not that
LA
kind of
partying. So
partying,
yeah,
but
that's definitely a good point. I feel like that's a good point to like end off this podcast on. So I don't know if you want to like plug yourself or plug your business. Like where can people find you if they want to? I mean, like DM you or check out your business.
yeah, absolutely. My main social is Instagram at just_win WYNN. If you're interested in my business and learning a little more about that, you can go to enclaveandkey.com. Besides that, guys, I really, really appreciate you having me on. You guys are absolutely fucking killing it. I see you guys all over the place. I had no idea you guys were that young. I knew you were young, and I've like seen your photos and stuff. So like I know what you guys look like. I did not realize you were 20. That's sick. I love that. So we'll definitely have to make sure that off this we connect some more as well. But guys, really appreciate the platform, and